Welcome and good day to you. This is another webinar on one of a very related topic in our footprint webinar series. And we will be having many more topics as part of the footprint webinar. I am Natasha Bejnath Pillay. I'm the Resource Management and Sustainability Manager at horticultural. And for those who do not know, horticultural is an industry association that has members in the palm and stone, or the deciduous fruit sector in South Africa. horticultural supports members, and we represent our members on a number of issues via research, market development, economic transformation, as well as sustainable agricultural practices. So I'm your host and your moderator for today. I have a wonderful panel today to share so much of information, beautiful stories to share, beautiful technical information, very useful information that will be shared with you as to how and where and why, etc. So without further ado, let me introduce my panel to you. On my far left, on your right, is Matthew. Matthew Guest is a sustainability specialist at CESA, the Sustainability Initiative of South Africa, doing some amazing work on the compliance side to assist our farmers in terms of market access and sustainable compliance, essentially. So Matthew holds a master's degree in agriculture from the University of Stellenbosch. He's worked both in academia as well as in the industry, private sector, as well as public sector as well. And he's actually quite interesting. He's been an agricultural economist. He's also been an ESG climate consulting analyst. How cool is that? And he's now a sustainability specialist at CESA. So welcome, Matthew. Really honored to have you here with us.
Sure.
Ms. Anel Blithout, on my immediate left, is a sustainability expert. This face isn't new. She's been on our webinar before on green financing, sharing a lot of information, and one of it was carbon footprinting, but we'll just unpack that today. Anel is the sustainability expert and a partner at Blue North Sustainability. She has well over 20 years of experience in environmental science. She has got such a lot of information to share with you on so many different environmental topics. It's really so much fun and so inspiring to listen to the work she's doing. She's got experience in climate change, restoration ecology, sustainable agriculture, waste reduction, carbon emissions management, resource management. Wow, Anel's just, and she's helped like well over 100 farmers to already improve their sustainability and help them move in this journey as well. So thank you, Anel, for for all the work that you do and for being on the panel with us again today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. And Zelda in the middle. Zelda Kennedy is the communications manager at Fruitways. She leads the strategic messaging, brand storytelling, and reputational management for the group. And as we delve into today's topic, you'll see why it's so important to tell the positive and to tell the right story. Zelda's got 21 years of experience at Fruitways, 10 years of which has been in logistic leadership, and that is such an integral part of the business in the sector. She's definitely got that blend between operational issues and creative communication, which is such an asset to have. Zelda's got a Bachelor of Commerce in Marketing Management and a postgraduate degree in Logistics, Materials, and Supply Chain Management. So she's very committed on the strategic execution side as well as team leadership. So welcome, Zelda. Really a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great, thanks. So a very quick introduction into the topic for today. As we know, sustainability and climate change has become a very new narrative for a lot of us, especially fruit producers in the country or any agricultural product in the country. We have moved on from the journey from the World Summit on Sustainable Development up until our own very own South African Climate Change Act in the span of 20, 30 years, which has come on fast. Everyone's talking about greenhouse gas emissions and reducing greenhouse gas emissions so that we can mitigate climate change. And one of the tools that we can use is a carbon footprinting. And today we'll talk about that. So for us in the agricultural sector, just doing a carbon footprinting and complying is just no longer a tick box. It's basically about business outcomes and being sustainable and having a competitive edge in everything that we do as fruit producers in South Africa. So I have a series of questions that I will put through to the panel. And we also will be taking chats, comments, and questions on the chat. And we will get to those questions at the end of the session today. It is a short session. We'll try to keep the webinars as short as possible and give you guidance and pointers as to where to get more information. If you'd like any further information, you're welcome to email Lindy at hortgrow.co.za so that she can connect you with anybody. She'll also put a series of websites that you can go to at the end of the session that will just help to make the journey and the exercise a little bit easier for you. So my first question is just around carbon footprinting for those who have heard about it and who have not heard about it, so that we get onto this journey together. Matthew, Caesar does such a lot of work in this regard. But just in a nutshell, tell us, what is carbon footprinting? Why is it so important as a management tool? Basically, what are its benefits and why do we need to get onto this now? We've spoken about legislative requirements, like international and national, but why is it so important for us to get here now?
Thanks, Natasha. In short, the reason why carbon footprinting is important as a management tool is because emissions in the past have largely been viewed as a byproduct. Not much thought has been given to it. However, we're in the midst of a paradigm shift where emissions are starting to be seen as more of a resource that needs to be managed and managed smartly and efficiently. And we have a saying in the CESA office, you can't manage what you don't measure, and therefore carbon footprinting is important because it provides data and evidence to show the degree of resource utilization, how emissions are being produced, how they're being managed on site, and therefore it provides data to help you manage your emissions. For markets, it also demonstrates possible impact, and therefore it is being used currently as a barrier to market access. And I think this segues quite nicely to the second question, or the second part of the question you asked, with regards to national legislation and international legislation. So from a national point of view, South Africa, we have the Carbon Tax Act. We are currently in phase 1, which began in 2019, but phase 2 of the Carbon Tax Act is supposed to begin in January 2026. So just around the corner. It's posted by National Treasury, and currently phase 2 is going to retain the blanket exemption on agriculture as was in phase 1. However, this is only pending the confirmation of the emission methodologies. As soon as the emission methodologies have been figured out and confirmed, then it will become applicable to agriculture. And when that happens, we are already a year too late. You need a year's worth of data to calculate a carbon footprint, and that's why it's important to start recording your data and doing your carbon footprint immediately. And I can say that no one's carbon footprint the first time around is as good as it can be. So it's always good to start as soon as possible and get a couple of years worth of data in there. And then from an international perspective, not really international legislation, but rather international market requirements from markets, retailers, mainly from the EU, will probably affect farmers and suppliers before the Carbon Tax Act. Mainly the CSDDD, the Corporate Sustainable Due Diligence Directive, and the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive. Specifically, the CSRD is going to require EU retailers of different sizes to report on their supply chain emissions all the way down to farm level. And so if you are maybe supplying French or German retailers, you might have already been asked to report your carbon emissions. Large retailers in the EU might have already sent you a letter that in 2026 you need to report on your 2025 emissions. So yeah, large retailers are going to be obligated to have those reportings in 2026 on the 2025 emissions, and then as time goes on, smaller retailers will have to be subject to the same requirements. Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, there's so much that we can still unpack just from that. There's a lot of legislation requirements as well, a lot of market demand requirements. We'll get into value chain emissions in a bit as well. But I just want to hear from Zelda. Zelda, in terms of fruitways, what does sustainable agriculture mean to you on an operational day-to-day level?
And Nikita, for fruitways, sustainable farming means growing apples and pears that is in harmony with its ecosystem. our people, and also to meet the expectations of our customers.
Yes.
It's about using our resources wisely, reducing our waste, and farming responsibly, so that we can still deliver quality fruit while caring for the planet and future generations.
Yeah, and it's about taking everybody along, eh?
Exactly.
It's not just a one small operation, if you think of it that way. I'm very excited to share with you the Confronting Climate Change project. I had been, when I got into hot grow, this was one of the most exciting things I ever came upon. I stumbled upon it, and it's so amazing, the incredible work that's being done in the Portman Stone sector, in the fruit and wine sector. So I would really love Anel to unpack that for us so that we can get some information and also understand what the Confronting Climate Change is about, what are the benefits of it, and exactly how many Portman Stone businesses are part of it. It is really incredible stuff. So I'd really love you to share some insights with us, Anel, on the Confronting Climate Change project.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha. So Confronting Climate Change started very long ago, in 2008.
Yeah.
It was conceptualized at that point, and it was really the fruit and wine industry bodies that was sort of forward thinking in that respect, because they had started to get questions from the market around food miles and then what to do with this. And out of that came the idea of a product carbon footprint calculator. Took a few years to conceptualize it and eventually sort of get it into a workable tool. And then in around 2011, Blue North got involved, and we're managing that calculator and developing it as we go along on behalf of the fruit and wine industry bodies. And I think what it's done, it's really helped producers to understand climate change through all the training that we're doing. It's understanding the concept of carbon footprinting, which was a strange word in 2008. It's more most people understand that word now.
Yeah.
And it's around identifying your hotspots. So those areas in your business that contribute most to your overall emissions, and then trying to see what you can do to reduce it.
Okay.
So over the years, with all the training that we've done, and we continue to do that training because there's always new entrants to the market, what's exciting is that we now sit in a place in the palm fruit industry where there's 44% of our producers, based on the hectares in the industry, that has done a carbon footprint. And then in the stone fruit industry, 34%, again, based on the hectares over the time. The even more exciting part is where Fruitways, I can give as an example, has calculated their carbon footprint over many, many years. And then through calculating what Matthew said, you don't always start off in the best place. Your data is a bit all over the show, and you improve over time. And now we get our producers asking us, how can we reduce emissions? You can see the trends now. You can actually see reduction. So that is a wonderful place to be, but we acknowledge still a lot of work to do in getting everybody in the industry on board.
Yeah. So the carbon calculator, the one that's developed for CCC initiative, tell us a little bit more about that, because we know globally, we're competing globally, and globally there are so many carbon calculators to use. Tell us a little bit about how this calculator has been specifically designed for us in South Africa, and how valid is it, or how can we verify the information that we have with our calculator in terms of what is available globally?
Yeah. So true. Carbon calculators are popping up all over the show. And I think there's a few principles that one just need to think about when you choose a carbon calculator. And first of all, there is a set of rules or a set of standards that governs how we account for carbon emissions. And that sort of rule book that we used in CCC is the GHG protocol, and then also the PAS 2050 life cycle assessment for specifically for horticultural products. So that's important to keep in mind when you choose a carbon calculator. I think the other thing is to also understand at the back of any carbon calculator, there's emission factors. That's factors that you apply to a certain product or a certain input that you have.
Yeah.
And some of those need to be specific to a country. So if you use, for example, a European calculator, and they don't make use of South African emission factors, specifically for electricity, you may have a wrong calculation. It might be usually underestimated. And the reason for that is our coal-based electricity is very carbon intense, where the package of European electricity they've got a more renewable energy in it, which lowers their emission factor. So just important to understand those principles behind, I want to say, almost a good carbon calculator.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really amazing. And that's one of the things that I've just been on a carbon calculation, a carbon footprinting course, which was so insightful. And now I understand all of this so much better, and I understand the work that goes into developing a carbon calculator. I would so encourage you to use one that is developed for us in South Africa. There's a lot of work that went into that was paid for by the fruit and wine industry, and we have it it's accessible to us. I'd love to hear from Zelda and Fruitways in terms of their experience, your experience with using the CCC carbon calculator and be part of the initiative. What were the opportunities it's created for you? What were the benefits? Also, what were some of the challenges that you had and how you overcome them? Just to inspire those who have not even started to think about it.
Thanks, Natasha. Now, being part of the Confronting Climate Change program has helped us focus on measuring and evaluating our energy emissions and our energy use and emissions from our farms to our pack houses. The program gives us a tool to measure our carbon footprint and also to compare it with others in the industry. Some challenges that we've had is in collecting the accurate data and putting systems and processes in place that record accurate data. But since we've done that, it's just become a normal managing reporting system. So it's just about getting the right people, giving the right information at the right time, and just knowing how to do it. And implementing initiatives to reduce our carbon footprint, like solar energy projects, that can take a lot of time, investment, and also careful consideration. So the CCC program creates awareness and visibility of your environmental footprint, which leads to actions and initiations that build stronger resilience, and that is good for the business.
And you can compare
for the planet.
and you can compare what's going on in your region as well. So one of the things that I've learned on the carbon footprinting course is definitely that information that you require does not really reside with one person. It can be with the financial department, logistics department, utilities, all sorts of places. So it's really so important to go through this exercise at least once, even on a rudimentary scale, just to understand the kind of information you would need to start off a carbon calculation. And then you get better. As Zelda says, you get better over time with that. So Matthew, one of the things that stood out to me in this carbon footprinting course was the fact that South Africa's emissions, the carbon emissions for South Africa, is equivalent or the same as the whole of Africa's emissions put together. But if you compare South Africa's carbon emissions globally, we're only 1% to what is emitted out there in the world, or compared to the rest of the world. And then we have to ask ourselves why, if we are emitting just 1%, why are we taking it so seriously? Shouldn't others be doing this? But we heard earlier on in your introduction, Matthew, that it hinges on market access and that competitive advantage and what the retailers want. So I know Caesar's got such a lot of information. The whole ESG suite of legislation and requirements is so fundamental to having a sustainable business in this sector. Just give us a little bit of information about the environmental standard, ESG, and this whole carbon footprinting. Why is it becoming so important, especially for trade?
Thanks, Natasha. So to first talk about the CESA standards, CESA has two standards, the social standard and the environmental standard, both of which are within the suite of ESG compliance. But just focusing on the environmental standard, our CESA environmental standard was developed in 2017 with WWF, and it is designed to encompass the 4 pillars of environmentalism, which is soil, water, biodiversity and ecosystems, and waste, energy, and materials/chemicals, which we've grouped together. It is created based on South African legislation as a minimum requirement, but it also accommodates or is oriented for market requirements that aren't necessarily a part of South African legislation. It is benchmarked against other standards, such as Rainforest Alliance, FSA. We have agreements with Global Gap and LEAF. So we do these benchmarks to garner market recognition and market acceptance. And therefore, instead of, for example, if you need to supply 3 different markets and have to do 3 different audits, that's no longer an issue because you can do 1 audit in CESA, avoid the duplication, and then get that market access and that market flexibility. It is a little bit more complicated than that, but in a gist, that's what it is. And then to talk about why we focus on carbon so importantly in South Africa, like I said, it is about market access. Market access is the name of the game. And the markets really have the ability to call the shots because they regulate their own access.
Yeah.
And in terms of competitiveness, if you think of barriers to market access as a wall, this new regulation or these new regulations are another brick on top of that wall. So competition for that access will be driven by first mover advantage and reducing compliance costs as much as possible. So compliance costs, that's CESA is going to handle that. But first mover advantage, that is up to the suppliers. They need to start calculating their carbon footprints as early as possible if they want to have the competitive advantage. And then maybe it's just worth saying that it's important to demonstrate impact through measuring. Yeah. Like I said in my first answer, that's why carbon footprinting is so important, because it demonstrates impact, it gives that data, and it's important that markets have visibility on that data. So if you use some sort of digital record keeping tool like CESA Track 360, that has direct visibility to your markets. All of your markets have My CESA accounts. They all log in and then see your whatever they have visibility on, whether that's audit reports, and your environmental data. And then because we have agreements with carbon calculators such as CCC, you can record your data, have it optionally sent through to CCC, who will deliver your carbon report back, and then that's included in the visibilities.
Okay.
So yeah, and then that also avoids duplication. You don't have to record your data both on CESA and CCC side. It's all integrated through an API link. So
that's fantastic that it's so streamlined.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much. I think that's very useful information. Sometimes the pockets of information are all over the place. But CESA is a one-stop call if you need to find out more information on carbon footprinting, on market access, on the CESA environmental legislation or the ESG requirements, etc. We will post the links to CESA at the end of the session or towards the end of the session. You're also very welcome to contact HortGrow, and we will then link you to whichever information portal or guideline that you'd need from us to you. Anil, I know we talked about coming back to you on the carbon emissions in the value chain. I think that for me is really important so that we understand, like Matthew said, you can't manage what you cannot measure, and you cannot improve what you don't actually know what's happening.
Yeah.
So it's really important for us to understand where these pockets of carbon emissions are in the value chain. Tell us a little bit about that. Where do you get this information from? How is it put together? Who gets it? How is it sent out to us, etc.? So just tell us a little bit about that whole story.
Okay, wonderful. So first of all, if we look at the supply chain and we break it up in little blocks, I say it's like Lego blocks that you can put together. We've got the farm, we've got the pack house, and then we've got distribution. The areas that you have most control of and that you can really have an impact is on the farm side and the pack house. And if you then look at farm, we use the word hotspots, but it's just the area that contributes most to your overall emissions. So we've got 3 hotspots there. So your electricity use, that's mainly because of the pumping of water for irrigation purposes. Diesel usage that you would use for harvesting, pruning, fertilizer application, and then lastly your synthetic nitrogen. which when it's applied, it releases nitrous oxide, which is a powerful greenhouse gas. So that's the three things on the farm side that you can actually think about controlling when you want to reduce your carbon emissions. It's also the three things that cost you the most money as a business. So it makes business sense. You'll save money, but you'll save on emissions as well. So the two goes together. On the packhouse side, it remains packaging emissions that you don't always have so much control over because it's to a certain extent gets dictated by the market. But I think you can have an influencing role when it comes to that. And then you can, of course, try and reduce any wastage or breakage. But the other big one is electricity once again. So there you can easily benefit from installing solar PV on your packhouse roof. Most of that electricity goes into the cold storage and the controlled atmosphere. So I think that's where most of the emissions lie.
Yeah.
Then how do you know this? And that is, first of all, for the individual producer out there doing their carbon footprint calculation, doing CCC, where you get a very detailed report and it tells you in each of those areas, where can you save an emission? So if you had a specific intervention, what would the low-hanging fruit be? And then, of course, you can compare yourself with your region and your commodity. And that just comes from years of CCC data collection. We wouldn't have been able to give that if the industry didn't support it over so many years. But the other big place where you can see this information is the annual benchmark reports that we do for Woodgrow and for all industry bodies. So there's a specific one for stone fruit and a specific one for palm fruit. And that aggregates all the industry data together and it gives you the benchmarks. It will give you benchmarks not just overall for carbon footprint, but also for your diesel usage, your nitrogen, your packaging, your electricity, all of that summarized together.
Fantastic. So just for the audience to know, the benchmark reports that we have at Hortgrow will be posted on our website and you will have access to them. So this will give a little bit more context into what Anel is talking about in terms of the hotspots, the kind of emissions and possible solutions, etc. So we're also hoping to widely distribute this. I'm not sure when it's going to be on the website, but very soon, perhaps just after today. I like what you talked about in the sense that you wouldn't have had this information over the many, many years if the industry was not supportive of it. I'm also very excited about something else that is just a give back. And it's a nice story to tell. South African fruit, our South African initiatives in the fruit sector have been amazing. And we want to keep telling this story. And the Carbon Heroes, for me, that was so exciting and so interesting. And it really gave such a beautiful story of farmers and recognition for their efforts. Tell us a little bit about the Carbon Heroes project, how to get on board, what does it mean, what the benefits are. And then I wanted to ask Zelda just after that about their experience with the Carbon Heroes as well.
So a bit of a story. Carbon Heroes idea originated when David Farrell, our CEO of Blue North, and I traveled to Zimbabwe a few years back. We spent lots of time waiting in the airport, sat on the airport at Harare, and we thought, sure, there's such amazing things happening in the industry. There's so many good stories that we can tell, but we felt there's a need for recognition. And that's when the idea began. Our first step into this was to say, let's start Carbon Heroes. Let's link it to our CCC platform. And so everyone that has done their carbon footprint can then be on there and have themselves displayed and tell their good stories. But from the onset, we always had the idea to not limit it to carbon, but we wanted to test the water.
Yeah.
So we allowed other stories beyond carbon being told there. But then last year, this year, we expanded the platform and we rebranded it and we included a lot of categories in the form of badges. So there's a foundational compliance badge that will speak to your CISA certification, for example, or any other certifications that you might have. Water, biodiversity, transparency, and then, of course, carbon. We kept the name Carbon Heroes because it was already entrenched in the industry. So how this works is there's a little bit of a rule book behind it, because we want to just ensure a little bit of rigor and that we're not greenwashing. So when we tell a story, we want you to just transparently tell it and upload any information that you can give to show your measurements, your reductions over time, and the impact that you're having in those categories. And for those three, you can then either have a bronze or a silver or a gold badge. The use of this platform, like I said, is meant to give recognition. It's meant to tell the story, and it's meant to be positive and light. And with that, we publish a QR code. So you have a QR code, and you have a few badge designs that you can use, and we send that to a pack to you that you can use for your marketing purposes. And we've made the 100 mark this year. So,
Wow.
So 100 of producers out there being on Carbon Heroes, which is great. And we have to grow this even further. And there's no additional cost to that for any producer.
So I like that it's related to carbon footprinting because you get a carbon footprint badge,
Yes.
which makes it probably easier to get onto the bandwagon to start your other elements on the journey.
Yeah.
So I want to go to Zelda. Zelda's got some information to share with us about their journey with applying for Carbon Heroes. How easy was it? How hard was it? What were the challenges? And how do you anticipate this now to add to whatever you're doing in your marketing, storytelling, and Fruitways?
Yeah, so for us to apply to be a Carbon Hero, we had to put systems in place that actively track the key data of our electricity, fuel use, and transport across our operations.
Okay.
And this we already had because we were part of the CCC program. So that was not
Easy.
hard for us, yeah. So being a Carbon Hero, this will help us understand our carbon footprint better and help us find ways to reduce it. And it is, and over time, it's expected to help with smarter decision making and lowering costs, and then also strengthen our reputation with customers that care about sustainability.
And you're like a brand new Carbon Hero.
And
Maybe you
I
just
just
the 100 mark.
Oh, not me. Us.
Yes, Fruitways took the 100 mark. Fantastic. Well done for the efforts in that regard. I think that's really important to recognize the efforts that are out there because there's such good work happening and we're not really telling the stories as much as we should. So I'm really in appreciation of this platform and I really hope that you can all go and visit the website. We will share that website with you at the end of the session. So are there any questions on the chat? I don't see any actual questions and we do have at least 10 minutes left. So I'm going to just add a few more engaging points on our side for further engagement. If there are no questions, you're welcome to post your questions on the chat and I will just be looking at it in the next 5 minutes or so. So Matthew, I know you spoke about Global Gap and all the other affiliates or the other requirements that aim for sustainable agriculture. And Global Gap is now in the process of doing their own environmental sustainability solution, which is basically a whole spectrum of sustainability, so-called standards that are out for comment and they're actually in development. What they do ask for as a minimum is a product environmental footprint. Which is different from a product carbon footprint. So fundamentally, a product carbon footprint is essentially the first step before getting to a product environmental footprint, which is basically a whole analysis of the whole life cycle. So what's CISA's role in terms of understanding these new requirements and bringing them in a way that's not duplicated, but more streamlined to our farmers?
Thanks, Natasha. Yes, so you're right. The Global Gap ESS standard is being developed. CISA is included in the development of that standard, but I can't comment on the development of that standard yet. When it does come out eventually, and it eventually gets published, we will be benchmarking against the Global Gap ESS standard so that we can retain that recognition. So, for example, one of the cost-saving initiatives in CISA is a Global Gap CISA combined audit, where instead of doing a separate Global Gap audit and a separate CISA audit, you do it combined, where one auditor comes out, they do both checklists at the same time, and give you 2 audit reports. So that saves a lot on the actual auditing costs. And actually, similarly with LEAF, the new LEAF standard V17 is about to come out early next year, and we will also be benchmarking against that. And like we have with Global Gap, we actually have a very sophisticated cost-saving initiative with LEAF, where one auditor will come out, they will do a CESA audit with the LEAF bolt-on, so it's 1 checklist instead of 2.
Yeah.
1 audit report with both badges on it, and LEAF has recognized the multi-year validity period. So if you have a low risk and you get a 3-year validity period, that is for both your CESA and LEAF audits. 2 years as well, 1 year as well. So that is probably our biggest cost-saving initiative.
Thank you. Deeply appreciate that. Really, Dee. Thank you so much for that. We do have questions. If you can just scroll up, Lindy. Okay, so there's a comment that CCC focus or measures the lowering of the 3 bads. I think that's just a comment. But there is a question. When will it start to measure the legio goods, but not like burning? I don't know what. Do you know what that means?
The many good things.
Okay, okay, like burning, biochar, etc. I'm not sure if anybody wants to tackle that.
I can tackle that.
Okay, go for it now.
So I know emissions is perceived as the bad, but it's actually not the bad. It's just your reality. You're going to have emissions in agriculture, and we just want to move towards trying to minimize that as much as we can. Yeah. So that's the first. In terms of things like using biochar, not burning, increasing your soil health, the effect that that's really going to have, it's going to probably, for example, increase your soil's water holding capacity, which is going to lead you to use less water for irrigation, which means less electricity. So your carbon footprint is going to come down. Thinking of soil health, healthier trees, you might use less agrochemicals.
Yes.
Or you might need less synthetic fertilizer. So all of those good things is actually accounted for indirectly, and it shows up. It really shows up in your carbon footprint.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So that's also in the benchmark report. You'll see elements of it in the benchmark reports as well. A comment from Wolf. Great progress made with the data collected thus far. Would we be able to supply commodity-wide carbon data for stone and palm as needed if Agri enters EU CBAM ETS scheme in, say, 2028 or 2030? I think the answer will be yes. But I'll let you answer that. Let's finish this. Note, this edition of Agri is not a guaranteed outcome.
This edition of, sorry?
Agri, like agriculture.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the CBAM requirements are still under development, and how the finer details of how they were calculated. But having this carbon footprint data is immensely valuable. It also puts the industry in a position where they can actually negotiate.
Yes.
So if you had nothing, then a value could be given to you. But now we have something of all of the years. So I think it's immensely powerful. And just the fact that so many of our producers are on a journey to reduce emissions will also help at an individual level.
Yeah, and as much as there's such lovely progress made with the CCC already, we really want to have 100% coverage of palm and stone. We're sitting on 44 for palm and 34 for stone. It definitely has increased over the years, and we just want to be putting ourselves in a better stead when it comes to CBAM implementation and the carbon tax implementation, etc., so that we are not caught having to pay huge sums of money where we could have at least brought it back into profitability for the country and for our growing economy. So yes, definitely wanting to make more progress there. Thank you all for that question. There's a question from Madiba. What effect or relationship is there on carbon footprint on quality and food safety on fruits? Anybody? Okay, Matthew?
I don't know if this will answer the question, but in CESA, the best practice that we see most common is renewable energy. So I think that's also the first sort of option that suppliers kind of jump to when they want to reduce their carbon emissions. And that definitely doesn't have as big of an impact on food quality. Yeah. However, if you're going to do changes in the orchards, for example, you're changing how much synthetic nitrogen you're throwing in the orchards, that may have an impact, but I can't necessarily comment on that. But yeah, we see, from CESA's perspective, we see renewable energy as the #1 intervention in reducing emissions.
Yeah, and then Anel spoke about soil health and all the additional benefits that it has, not only on just carbon and emissions and cost savings, but it could also impact the quality of fruit based on how much chemicals you're putting in or what integrated pest management systems you're using, fertilizers, etc. So I hope that gives some kind of guidance on that. I think the next question is for you, Matthew. Are CESA and Global Gap the same? Do they have the same certificate number?
Good question. No, they are not the same. It is a bit confusing because we do have an option to do a combined audit approach. However, they are different. They have different numbers. So yes, please communicate with your markets, see what audits you are required to do. And yeah, if you are required to do both, we have those cost-saving initiatives in place, but it's not the same certificate. They have separate numbers.
Yeah, thank you so much. A question from, actually a comment. She said it's not a question. It's from Catherine. Catherine is the editor of the South African Fruit Journal. Not a question, but just kudos to the panelists and everyone else in the value chain for their efforts to equip growers and to inform the broader industry. Absolutely, I concur with you. Well done. From Esperson, if you get platinum on your CESA environmental or leaf bolt-on, the certificate is valid for 3 years. Does it mean that you don't have to be audited against the standard every year, only have to complete the SAQ? I'm not sure if you want to answer that now, or we can just take that question directly offline with Mr. Besson or Ms. Besson, but you're welcome to give it a stab.
I'll answer quickly now. In short, yes. If you do the CESA environmental with only the leaf bolt-on, both are valid for the 3-year period. And yes, all you need to do is the yearly SAQ. Make sure you do that because that is part of the in-between audit monitoring. And then also we will have to come and visit the farm to do a second-party verification within one of those 3 years as a requirement from LEAF.
Yeah,
yes.
But CESA's got amazing people on standby to answer all of your questions. They are so responsive. We will share their website and you can get all the details of the team members on the website as well. There's a question. Would you say that the use of biochar is promoted due to its benefit, even though during its production there is greenhouse emissions, not if done correct? Oh, so somebody answered that. I think biochar serves 2 purposes, and one being that the combustion of it emits less CO2 emissions, but what we were talking about is biochar application on soil. So there are these 2 benefits. I'm not sure if you want to add to that.
I'll give it a go.
Go for it.
But I'm not a biochar expert and I'm not a soil scientist. Yeah. But I think, yeah, there's definitely potential in biochar. If it's someone if done correctly, made the comment there, which I agree, it must just be done correctly. And then there's potential, but I always feel that the biochar, as a concept, there's still lots to learn.
Yes.
And lots of research to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely something that can be explored.
Fantastic, thank you. And we'll just take one more before we wrap up because we will be running out of time. Lindy is posting some of the important websites for you to look at if you need more information. Wolf says, for Zelda, have you seen buyers highlighting... Oh, Lindy, we just need to go back to the comment if you could just scroll up. For Zelda, have you seen buyers highlighting fruit waste carbon reductions as a competitive advantage?
I cannot say that. I do know that we've got buyers that are very that think sustainability is very important for them. Some markets really like the European markets are more invested in sustainability, and they'd like to see us do our part for the environment. A competitive advantage. It's a difficult question to answer. Is it directly
It's a preference that they have, and they obviously will place more weighting on a benchmark report or showing your carbon footprinting than if you didn't.
Yes.
So it's a credibility, reputational part of it. So thanks, Wolf, and thanks everyone for those wonderful comments. We have to wrap up now. I just have a few points to wrap up with. And now, how do we get information on the CCC initiative? Besides just the website that's on there, how do we become a signatory to the CCC?
Yes.
Carbon, just give us some of your parting shots before we close.
Lots of options. Going to the website. CCC is actually open to enter your data, so you can just register and start playing around with it. It's only when you want to calculate your carbon footprint that you need a license for CCC. The Carbon Heroes website is also very friendly, and there's a button right the right-hand top corner that says apply now, and we'll get back to you. So I think it's a very easy process, or you can just email us. The email address is on there.
It is. Play around on the website. There is a question from Joanne, but I don't think we really got time to take it. Actually, let's take it. Please explain the connection between CESA and CCC. Example, if I captured my data on the CESA 360, which we haven't spoken about, but Matthew can give us some very brief information on that. How can we link or connect to CCC for Carbon Heroes?
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. So I'm going to try to do this as quick as possible. CESA 360 program, CESA Track, it's a management tool. You record your water use, water abstraction, fertilizer use, waste records. So all of your record keeping for compliance reasons and for calculating a carbon footprint can be done on the CESA Track 360 program. Yeah. Once you have recorded a year's worth of data, so you've got a year's worth of data done, it will give you the option to send it to one of the recognized carbon calculators. That is CCC, and we've recently also recognized Aggregate 1. So you have the option of selecting one of those carbon footprint calculators. Your data automatically gets sent through to them. They will do what they do. They validate the data, calculate your carbon footprint, and then it gets sent back to CESA. So you have access to it on your large report, which is produced by the CESA Track 360 program. And in that report, if you choose to give visibility to your markets, they can then see that data as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And a parting shot from you just before we close. Anything you want to inspire the industry by?
Yes. Yes. Carbon regulations are no longer a far distant thing in the future. They are just around the corner. The Carbon Tax Act is like a bottom-up regulation, which is just around the corner. The EU regulations are top-down, so we're already being squeezed from both ends. So I'd really, really recommend that everybody explore the possibility of doing a carbon footprint, recording your data via standardized digital record keeping systems. And yeah, I think it's something that it needs to be considered and needs to be seen as something that is very important as of now. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Zelda, any parting comments from your end?
From my side, I think what growers or farmers have realized is a lot is being done already. It's just about documenting it and looking at it and tracking it.
Yeah. But we need to get used to doing it.
You're used to doing, you're already doing it. It's basically just documenting it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So thank you very much to the audience who have joined us today. This will be recorded and put onto our YouTube channel as well as on our website. There will be snippets of it and blogs on our platforms, our social media platforms as well. I would really love to take this opportunity to just thank the panel members. You've been so wonderfully able to articulate the responses in a meaningful, easy way. It's very relevant information. Thank you for the efforts you are making, and I hope you know the value of the work you are doing. It really is quite inspiring for all of us. So thank you very much for joining us. I hope that it's not going to be the last time we speak to you. So we're also hoping for the webinar, the footprint webinar, to have a lot more engaging topics for you. If there are specific topics of interest, you're welcome to send those lists to us. You can email Lindy or myself. And then from my side, I would just say, please share this recording with your fellow agricultural enthusiasts, students, companies, farmers, anybody whom you think will benefit from just the information that was shared here today. We do anticipate to have our next webinar on energy and water benchmarking, which is also something towards ESG and sustainability, but also very, very important for business sustainability and cost. So from my side, I would like to thank our technical team who works earnestly in the background with everything that we do at HortGrow. Thank you, audience, for joining us. And until our next webinar, let's journey together to leave a very sustainable legacy. Thank you for joining us.